The scene is shifted to the mountainous village of Beit al-Sakina, meaning house of serenity. It is a village inhabited by a small number of Christians. Life goes on quietly in its streets full of calm and sincerity. The scene is stopped at a young man in his early 30 years named Yusuf, meaning healer. Despite his tender age, Yusuf is known throughout the village for his calmness and sincerity. No one can compete with his strength, honesty, and ability to solve problems. And he works as a simple carpenter during the day. In his spare time, he always reads the Bible, constantly feeling an irreplaceable fire in his heart, a strong desire to understand the cause of the pain that surrounds the world, especially the pain he tasted when his father lost his childhood. One day, as Yusuf was fixing the door of the old church in the village, the sudden current was cut off and darkness enveloped everything. He heard a deep voice that does not resemble the voice of humans saying, "Yusuf, I was invited to be a server, but the road is not easy." He trembled his body and knelt to the ground unconsciously. People gathered around him worried, and when Joseph returned to consciousness, he explained to them what he heard. The priest, Stephen, who was an elderly man with a thoughtful face and eyes full of ancient knowledge, went out to the sound of tools that fell. He found Joseph pale and lying on the ground. When Joseph told him what he heard, the priest grabbed his hand and whispered, "Maybe you are the new chosen one." After that, the priest took Yusuf down a secret basement under the church, which had not been opened for hundreds of years. Inside the basement, there was an old stone sarcophagus. The priest opened it to reveal an old leather manuscript written in Coptic. After some time, Joseph returned, carrying the ancient manuscript with him. The priest was sitting in front of the church's altar, and after reading the content of the ancient manuscript, both of them were shocked by what they read because the book predicted the arrival of a man from the descendants of Yusuf al-Najjar, who will have to stand in the face of a dark force that will appear again on the ground. The priest explained to Joseph that centuries ago there were knights of light, holy warriors who were terrified of a heavenly power to fight the forces of evil. They disappeared mysteriously, leaving behind only stories and legends. And now the shadows are back. He continued, saying that the ancient book indicates that this shadow will be led by a great leader whose name is Satan, and he will try to plunge the world into darkness again, and that Satan will possess one of the righteous and make him his servant to pave the way for his return. And then the priest looked at Joseph with a meaningful look and said, "Maybe the one the book refers to is you, Joseph, because you heard his voice calling you." After a few days of confusion and prayer, Joseph decided to leave the village and go to the nearest city to get away from the visions that were chasing him, hoping that his life would return to normal. But somehow, the priest Stephen knew where he would go. And before Joseph left the village, he visited him and said, "Joseph, you cannot escape from what is coming, because what you are looking for is looking for you." Then he handed him a small wooden cross and said, "Keep it with you until I return to you." When Joseph reached the city, he thought that he might find peace in the company of his brother. He started to work in his shop, trying to forget what he saw and heard. But how could he forget the old priest's words? He felt a strange presence following him everywhere. The phone rang, and the caller asked him in a low, gruff voice, "Hello, Joseph." He was surprised because he recognized the voice, although he never spoke to anyone before. The man continued, "You know me well. I know you left the village to escape from what is coming, but you cannot escape from your destiny." And then he hung up the phone before Joseph could answer. He shuddered all over his body and decided to visit the priest again. On the way, he met a poor widow in the village named Miriam, who was paralyzed for years. She was known for her piety and charity, but she was very lonely since no one visited her. So Joseph entered her house to inquire about her and offer condolences. When Joseph touched her hand while he was praying, she suddenly healed. The story spread in the village like wildfire, and people began to come to him, believing that he was blessed. But Joseph refused this idea completely. He insisted that he was just a simple man who did not deserve such honor. However, the priest Stephen told him that these are the first signs that indicate the beginning of the mission assigned to him, and that he must prepare for what is coming. At the same time, in the neighboring city, a series of mysterious crimes began. Houses were invaded and valuables were stolen. Corpses were found without any trace of violence or struggle, and strange demonic symbols appeared on the walls of some houses. The most shocking thing was that the police found some hadiths written in an ancient language, indicating that these events are part of the return of an ancient sect that worships the first darkness. Everything indicated that the sect had revived, seeking to bring chaos and destruction to the world. While investigating the case, the police came across an old monk named Nathan, who seemed to know more than he was saying. Nathan was a man in his late 60s, had a shaved beard and head, and wore very simple clothes. When the police asked him about the sect, he smiled mysteriously and replied, "There is no sect, and if there is, I'm not a member of it." He showed no interest in the crimes that had happened. Instead, he talked to the police about the history of the region and the ancient manuscripts found in the area, noting that the region was witnessing a major battle between good and evil thousands of years ago. He also spoke about an ancient monastery located in the middle of the desert, indicating that the monastery witnessed terrible events that shook the foundations of the region. As soon as the police left, Nathan left the monastery and headed towards the desert, where the ancient monastery was located. On the other hand, Joseph learned from the priest that Nathan was originally a monk who turned away from faith about 600 years ago. He abandoned the monastery and went out into the world, wandering around and searching for forbidden manuscripts. So he fell into the trap of Satan and became his servant. As soon as Satan saw that Nathan was the right candidate to carry out his plan, he promised him great power and knowledge if he helped him revive his sect. So Nathan assembled the remaining members of the sect and began to perform black magic rituals to bring Satan back to earth. So Joseph had to go to the abandoned monastery in the desert to confront Nathan and prevent him from completing the rituals. As soon as Joseph approached the monastery, he heard screams and strange sounds coming from inside. He hid behind one of the rocks to see what was going on, and he was shocked by what he saw. He saw Nathan leading a group of men and women performing a terrifying ritual. Suddenly, Nathan noticed Joseph and shouted at the top of his voice, "Who are you? What you want?" He approached Joseph fiercely, and Joseph felt fear for the first time since he received his mission. But then he remembered the words of the priest Stephen and the words written in the ancient book. He stood up bravely and said, "I am the one who was invited to be a server, and I will not allow you to complete the ritual." Nathan laughed loudly and said, "You're too late, Joseph. Satan has already returned and I am his servant now." Suddenly, a powerful energy beam came out from the hands of Nathan and hit Joseph, causing him to fall on the ground. But miraculously, the wooden cross that the priest had given him emitted a brilliant light that pushed Nathan back. Both of them stood facing each other, and a fierce spiritual battle began. And here we end this episode, and we wait for your comments and thoughts in the second part. See you later.